The Switch 2 sucks, Nintendo sucks, and if for some godforsaken reason you pre-ordered it, you suck too. Not as much as the first two, but yeah, you kinda suck, and you're definitely the problem here. There's quite a few things wrong with the Switch 2, and they've all been talked to death already, so I want to be a little more opinion-based, even if it means compromising my quote-unquote professional integrity. For real, all the Switch 2 has done is shown me that my Switch OLED's got at least another 2 years left in it minimum. To start off the conversation on why this is the worst product Nintendo has ever put out, let's talk about the games here. I'll get to the third parties in a little bit because they're not nearly as important. It's a Nintendo console and you're buying it to play Nintendo games, and the big game launching with the Switch 2 looks like complete cheeks, like, not gonna lie. You know the meme, I hope your favorite game gets turned into open world slop? These bastards did it to Mario Kart. Freaking Mario Kart got open world slop. There's a few open world racing games on the market, the only one of note really being Forza Horizon, and there's a big reason Horizon works, and I can just already tell Mario Kart World's gonna completely fumble here, but the game's not even out yet. It's too early to judge. Dog, Nintendo showed off a minute of driving in a straight line, and that's one of the biggest advertised features of the new game. The whole you get to drive to the next track thing honestly leaves me completely dumbfounded on how the idea left the idea phase. In the Mario Kart World treehouse, they use the phrase, "the whole world feels like a course," specifically while they were driving to the second course in the almost completely straight line race, which I don't think could possibly be any more tone deaf to why people play Mario Kart. A few items, boost pads, and obstacles don't make a course in Mario Kart fun. A few nights ago, I was playing 8 Deluxe with my roommate, and in the back of my mind, I kept asking myself, why am I having so much fun right now? And the answer to that was tension. We were hot on each other, switching between first and second, constantly getting hit by some advantage or disadvantage that'd move our places around. I'd hit them with a red shell and be all excited that I came back up, only to get lost in that excitement and fall off the track and get past again. The loop of back and forth doesn't exist in these driving between course sections of the world. There's no tension in going from 19th place, getting a bullet bill, and then moving up to 7th, which is a problem on both the amount of players per match and the boring, almost 100% straightaway driving you'll be doing. Passing someone doesn't exactly mean as much if it's happening all the time. It doesn't feel like something that's earned when you do it every like 5 seconds, still far behind first and second. That tension will still be there for the first two, but really, who even cares when your only means of overtaking first in these sections are a lucky red shell from the occasional item on a boring road? They really hyped up these rails placed all over the place too, but like, are they really that important? In the situation where you're doing your straight as an arrow driving, they're just glorified boost pads. The charge jump too, I swear the only reason they made these a thing was to give just something, anything to make the straight line just a tiny bit less boring. It really screams, we ran out of ideas, here's the only thing we could think of to save our already sank ship. Off topic, one thing I saw from one of my favorite YouTubers who also had a lot to say about World, he said the game looks bad from a visual aspect. Honestly, I think that's the only thing the game has going for it. The game looks fun, like just visually. It's cartoony, it's childish, it looks like everything we'd want from a Nintendo game, which only makes the sting of knowing this game's gonna play as interesting as watching paint dry even worse. We didn't need Nintendo to reinvent the wheel here, especially if all they could come up with some Ubisoft slop. But hey, you know, it's not like Ubisoft slop was the only slop they could slop together for this slop project here. Why stop there when we could throw in Fortnite slop too? I don't honestly have much to say about Knockout Tour. It's just Battle Royale and Mario Kart format. It's not cool, it's not fresh, it's not innovative in any way, shape, or form. It's simply just more slop. Free roam, we're back to what I said about Forza earlier, and I guess we can't open it up to other open world driving games because that seems what World wants to be fitting in with. And the way I see it, World free roam is going to be perceived in one of two ways. It'll either be mid or a complete flop. It all depends on how much attention and detail Nintendo actually puts into the things to do around the map. They said there's like 200 P-switch challenges to do in the world, but the closest thing I really have to any like comparison to those would be the Korok seeds from Breath of the Wild. And show of hands here, how many of you actually felt compelled to go and find and complete all of those? My fear here is that most of the open world's activities are just going to be stuff adjacent to that, and if that's the case, instant flop. They fail to beat the Ubisoft allegations, and what we're left with is a complete dog water Mario Kart. If you really want to rebuke this, you could just keep holding on to dear life with the game's not out yet, you don't know, to which my response is, so when the game gets to launch in June, and it absolutely sucks. What's the cope gonna be then? 10 years with no fully new Mario Kart, and all we get is another open world garbage game that doesn't function well as an open world. But hey, you know, maybe the game's not just for me. Maybe I'm just not in that demographic of people that absolutely yearn to just hold the A button and slightly move the left stick every 10 to 20 seconds. But I'm ready to move on from Mario Kart. Let's talk about the Switch 2 editions. I knew Mario Kart wasn't going to be the thing that sold me on the Switch 2. At first, it was actually Switch 2 editions that got me really excited. Personally, I never finished Tears of the Kingdom. I sold it because I didn't play it for like 6 months. And like a week before the Switch 2 Direct, I got a craving to go back and actually finish it. And at first, when I saw that they were going to be making a visually enhanced version coming to Switch 2, I was hyped. I could play the game that always looked like it was going to be good on the Switch at 4K and literally anything above its native 20 to 30 FPS. That's what I wanted. It was a game that was still pretty new to me with a fresh coat of paint on it, making it feel even newer. For $10. Now, I'm not a stingy person. I spend way too much money, actually. It's pretty shocking I'm not in debt right now. I'm not buying this out of pure spite, because it's completely inexcusable for Nintendo to charge extra to solve a problem they created. Tears of the Kingdom had some incredibly stupid frame drop problems because Nintendo knew they were pushing the Switch to its absolute limit. They knew the game was going to have problems anyway, but they chose to drop it on the Switch regardless. This was also the first game Nintendo dropped at the $70 price point, which we were all okay with because we felt Nintendo would actually be charging $70 worth of game. So why the fuck am I paying an extra $10 to get a patch for the problems Nintendo created? Something that doesn't even need to be patched. It's not a patch. They're forcing us to pay extra if we don't want the game we already paid for to look like dog piss. This console can run the game at 4K 60 without a problem, but you need to spend an extra $10 for the privilege of fully utilizing the console you already spent $450 on. $80 for a 2-year-old game, by the way. I don't have a PC, so I don't have the option to pirate it either, which at this point, if I did have a PC, I'd absolutely do. I fully condone what I am about to say without any repercussions for the law. It is never wrong to pirate Nintendo games. As a matter of fact, you should look and see if the Nintendo game that you're about to pay for can be downloaded and emulated before you go out and pay $70 to $80 on it. Piracy absolutely 100% is a party, as a matter of fact. When your only other alternative is to go even closer to broke on the verge of a recession so some millionaire ass munch in Japan can get even richer, these people do not care about you, so you should not care about them. But what about the developers? Dog, we aren't the ones impacting the developers by pirating games. Have you looked at Nintendo stock prices lately? They have the money already. They don't need to be charging $80 for a 2-year-old game. A company in Nintendo's position should be announcing Tears of the Kingdom Switch 2 edition by saying the upgrade is free and, oh, if you haven't gotten the game yet, it's now on sale. Perfect time to pick up a classic and enjoy it like it's brand new if you haven't seen it before. If Nintendo was not run by greedy money munchers, no one would condone piracy, but that's not the world we live in. The one we are in is where you have to spend $530 before tax to play a 2-year-old game in the state it should have launched in. There's something about the Switch 2's design that really irks me, and I think it's just so boring. I have the Splatoon 3 Switch OLED. In my opinion, it's the prettiest Switch Nintendo made. It looks fun, crazy, all that sort of stuff. Now, obviously, it's going to be a bit till we get special edition Switches, and it's not like the Switch 1 was a real sight for sore eye either, but the all gray with red and blue accents on the Joy-Cons just screams corporate minimalism to me, and I've got really low faith for what we'll see with Joy-Con colors in the future, given the magnetic rails on the console are red and blue. I really hope this isn't an indication that we're not about to see any different colored Joy-Cons. I'm sure we will when Nintendo starts doing special edition consoles, because hey, why sell pretty Joy-Cons by themselves when we could get people to double dip and spend an extra $460 minimum? And I didn't misspeak there. Nintendo has a habit for charging an extra $10 on their special editions. Maybe we'll see that price go even higher this generation too. As for the internals of the Joy-Cons, I'm not going to beat around the bush and say anyone really cares about anything besides whether or not they're going to drift, because honestly, how often do you notice the HD rumble in your day-to-day play? No, we care about how long we've got until we have to spend another $90 on new controllers. And surprise, surprise, the controllers are going to get stick drift again. It doesn't take a scientist to figure out why Nintendo didn't use Hall effect sticks to prevent drift. No. Nintendo wants these Joy-Cons to drift. They know they're going to get sued again over it, and they know they'll have to pay for the repairs on them too. But answer me this: how many pairs of Joy-Cons did you replace because of drift? Now, how many times did you send your Joy-Cons to Nintendo to get fixed? I got a second pair of Joy-Cons because my first ones got stick drift. I know a bunch of other people that got new Joy-Cons because their first ones got drift. I know one person who sent theirs in to get fixed. You're not gonna send them in to get fixed. You're gonna buy new ones because that's what everyone did with the Switch 1, and it makes way more financial sense to just take the lawsuit hit and fix any stragglers that are willing to wait weeks to months to get theirs fixed when they know damn well that 90% of the people are willing to double dip on controllers when they don't have to, because they simply just don't want to wait. So anyone that still has the audacity to say that Nintendo is still one of the quote-unquote good companies do not intentionally make shit products with the intentions of making you buy more to solve their intentionally designed problems. One last thing on the console itself, I see a lot of people gassing this thing up for having the power of a PS4, maybe a PS4 Pro. There's a problem with that too though. All of that power on the handheld console doesn't really mean much if the console's dead and you don't have a charger on you. Of all of the different Switch 1 models, not one of them has a worse battery life than the Switch 2. But the battery depends on the game you're playing. I don't care. A 2-hour battery life in any game is never going to be enough. If I am on a 6-hour road trip and I want to play Cyberpunk in the car, it's completely reasonable to want to play it for more than half of the time. I am being asked to spend a minimum of $450 and all they can give back is 2 hours of playtime in the games I want to play. That's not excusable. And if you expected charge times to be any faster, don't worry, they're not. After your brand new Switch 2 dies from that 2 hours of Cyberpunk, if you leave it in sleep and don't touch it for another 2 hours, then you'll be back to a whopping 66% charge. So you can play Cyberpunk again for another hour and 15 minutes before it dies on you again. Switch 2 having a 3-hour charge time in sleep might be the only thing crazier than the 2-hour battery life. When we have fast charging that can charge my iPhone 16 from like 0 to 100 in an hour with fast charging, there's a massive problem there. The iPhone 16 Pro is more powerful than the Switch 2 as well. Yeah, it costs a lot more, but I'm having a hard time feeling like I want to spend half the price on a device that just can't even keep up in a very basic, trivial category, regardless of whether or not that comparison is fair. And even with all that, the Switch 2 is still technologically lacking, like Nintendo always is. And I mean, for as much time as they spent advertising its power, and sure, it's a decent handheld, but that's all it can ever hope to achieve. Decent. I and everyone else expected a lot more from Nintendo here. They didn't make decent before, they made great. Not anymore though. I mentioned in the beginning that we were gonna get to talking about the third parties, and this actually has a lot to do with what we were just talking about. Despite the Switch 2 being so powerful to the point it can only run for 2 hours, it's still too underpowered for third parties to make uncompromised games on for its full 9th/10th generation the Switch 2 is going to exist in. We're getting to the point in the 9th generation where we're finally seeing games no longer coming to 8th gen consoles, which has already lasted way longer than it has in generations prior. But one thing I noticed is a really important red flag that I haven't seen a whole lot of other people talk about is that a bunch of the exciting third-party games coming out were already released years ago. Cyberpunk, Hogwarts Legacy, Elden Ring, these games are really exciting for people who have only owned Nintendo consoles and haven't gotten to experience them before, and time regardless, they're great games, but they're quite a bit older now. The Switch 2 has the power somewhere between a PS4 and a PS4 Pro, right? The generation that's finally starting to get abandoned. We saw really impressive ports come to Switch 1, but those games were regarded as technological marvels, not a common thing that just happens all the time. And even then, those complete marvels still don't play very well. You guys ever played the 2 Dooms that came to Switch? I own them both, and holy downgrade, they leave a lot to be desired. Think of it 3 years from now. GTA 6 is the visual standard across the industry. Developers are going to be in the same spot of trying to port games onto a weaker than the competition handheld. And it's pretty much written in the stars that Switch 2 isn't going to sell the same way that Switch 1 did. We're at a real risk of devs skipping Nintendo consoles again because it's just not worth the investment. I mean, Switch 1 is the second best-selling console ever, and devs still choose to skip it. Do you really think that couldn't happen again? It'll never happen as bad as it did on the Wii U, but what I'm saying is don't take the Switch 2's third-party launch lineup as how it's going to be for the whole generation. You suck, you know that? If you pre-ordered this console, you are the problem. I mean that with no emotional attachment behind it. That's not a targeted statement, that is a big blanket encasing everyone who paid for this console before it was even out yet, or hell, had more than one exclusive on it. You're in the dunce cap and you should feel bad about that. You see that? That's you. The early adopters are the ones that give Nintendo the confidence to do all of this anti-consumer garbage. Even worse, there's the ones that complain about the price then pre-order it anyway. I truly believe that I and the others that did not give Nintendo our money for something that isn't out yet and seems like an unfair deal are just better at literally everything than the people who suckle from the money-hungry, greed-consumed peat that is modern Nintendo. What I find even crazier than the people that pre-order the Switch 2 is the incomprehensibly high amount of people who defend the decisions Nintendo makes when it literally screws them over. Like, why are you defending paying more for a worse system? A system that makes you pay for a subscription to use one of the controller's buttons. A system with a 2-hour battery life. A system with controllers you'll have to replace in 6 months to a year. I mean, really, what is there to defend here? The potential that one day it might not suck as much a year after launch? Guys, did you know that you could just keep your perfectly functioning Switch 1 and play the games that are gonna keep coming onto it for like another year at least, till the Switch 2 has a good game library? Like, seriously, Switch 1 exclusives are not ending until at least like 2026. There's no way the most slot Mario Kart in the series and a $10 tech demo really made you feel that enticed to drop $500 plus tax at launch. I mean, if you're worried about scalpers at launch, just wait longer. I don't know if it's FOMO or brand loyalty, some other really stupid condition of the human psyche that really makes people want to get bent over by the billion-dollar corporation. But if these people don't wake up at some point, we are never going to get a Nintendo that made stuff as peak as the Switch 1's Year 1 game library ever again. One day I'm gonna own a Switch 2. It's inevitable. They're gonna make a game I really want to play, but I'm not going to let them see a cent of my money. I'm gonna buy my console pre-owned. I'm gonna buy my Joy-Cons pre-owned. I'm gonna keep a receipt and return it if they start to drift. The games I want that they make are gonna launch a month after for me, so I can find them pre-owned as well. My goal of being a future Switch 2 owner is to give Nintendo a grand total of $80 to $100 the whole generation. It would be zero if online was free, but since you can't exactly buy Switch Online pre-owned yet, that probably won't be happening. Nintendo's not the worst console maker on the market. That easily goes to Microsoft. I still think they're the best actually, but they're only the best because they were down so bad for the Wii U generation that they were forced to give us something amazing with the Switch 1. We wouldn't have gotten amazing games like Mario Odyssey, Splatoon 2, Tears of the Kingdom, and so many others if Nintendo didn't have to give us good products. I miss the struggling Nintendo. The Nintendo that had to redeem itself and did its absolute best to show us that its games and consoles were worth buying. That's not Nintendo anymore. This is the Nintendo that knows its man-child audience has its back and will fight tooth and nail to defend the billion-dollar corporation. And that makes me sad. Brand loyalty is a depressing thing. I used to be a die-hard Xbox player and I switched to PS5 this generation. People say PS5 has no games, but dear lord, going from Xbox to PlayStation for the first time this generation has left me with the biggest backlog I have ever had in my life. I say that to express that having brand loyalty like I had to Xbox kept me from experiencing some truly amazing things. Brand loyalty to Nintendo gives everyone a worse experience. We are living through it right now. Another pokey slop on the way, people losing their shit over Metroid running at what was the industry standard 6 years ago, a worse yet paid version of Discord. The Switch 2 sucks, man. Not in the same way that the Wii U sucked. There was soul put into the Wii U. That's not the case with the Switch 2. I think the classic Nintendo cycle of banger console being followed by a flop is going to happen this generation too. It's not going to flop nearly as bad as the Wii U did, but it won't hit the highs Switch 1 ever did, which is going to really piss off Nintendo's investors. Good. At least that way we'll know we're in for a good generation after this one that takes us back to Nintendo with something to prove. It's just a real shame that we're not going to have like that level of quality for another 4 to 5 years. Sure, Switch 2 will have the occasional banger, but I feel fully confident in saying that the Switch 2 is going to suck. And that's because Nintendo sucks. And the only reason Nintendo sucks is because we are the suckers that bought into it. So really, we suck. Not me though, I'm goated. You're all a bunch of overweight soy boy Nintendobros. Pro tip, if you can't afford a Switch 2, pick up a new hobby like doing something with your life. Yeah, I think that's about all I've got to say about it. Don't buy a Switch 2, pirate Nintendo games, loot the Nintendo store, burn down an orphanage, overthrow the government, hang the president of Uganda. Man, I love making outros. I really don't know what else to say here besides the basic YouTuber stuff. Subscribe to Save My Dying channel, like my video, bully Nintendo fanboys. Alright, bye.